Welcome to Real Mob Stories with James Proctor. Hope everyone's doing well today. We have a lot we're going to cover today. This is going to be an end of month show for what's been going on in July. So, got quite a few things I want to talk about. One is that we have the 1 year anniversary of Joey Merlino being on the air. So, we're going to look back at what Joey has done in the past year. Also going to share, a video from his biggest nemesis, Phil Leonetti, and so we'll discuss that. And then also we'll look at what's going to happen, in the future for Joey Merlino. And in addition to that, we're going to talk about Jee Burell. And, I really believe that he's still working with the feds. I still feel that he's a confidential informant. And so I am going to share the reason why I think that, and also some of the peculiar things that occurred based upon his arrest and what he's doing now. So we will definitely discuss that. And Jeff Nadeau did a interview again with Louis Kasman. And so I'm just going to, I thought it was a good interview, but I'm going to share another perspective of Louis Kasman and approach it from the angle of why the Gotti family has such an issue with him, because it's really, pretty personal when it comes to Louis Kasman. And so I'm going to share what those issues are. I appreciate everybody getting us over the 30,000 subscribers. I mean, I just can't believe that we went from like 10,000 subscribers a year ago to over 30,000 today. And I just want to thank all of you that have been supportive, everyone that's been watching the videos, the comments, the engagement. It means everything to me. And, I really appreciate the community that we've been able to develop. It's been based upon, everyone coming together, and also, want to thank my friend and former partner, Lee Cole, for all that he did to help bring this channel to where it is today. So please hit the like button and consider subscribing to Real Mob Stories with James Proctor. And without further delay, on to our feature presentation. So it's definitely been an interesting year for Joey Merlino. I know that for me personally, I was surprised that he was going to come out on YouTube. I know that was, after the fact, I realized that that's something that he had been considering for a couple of years. But, in the past year, he's really been able to build his subscribership. And then I know that, I don't know, about 6 months in, he was saying that that many of his videos were getting shadow banned. And so they went over to Patreon. And so I know that, they have a pretty big subscribership over there. He's been doing his lives and all of that. And so I know for me personally, I really enjoyed the interview that he did with Pete Rose. I'm a big baseball fan, and, it was, interesting to actually, hear them together. So to me, that was the interview I really enjoyed the most with Joey Merlino. And so what I wanted to do is actually play something that, please check out Infinite Lee Productions. So I'm going to take a couple of clips from Infinite Lee Productions. And, the first clip is with is with Phil Leonetti talking about his relationship with Joey Merlino. Phil Leonetti.
Human being alive. This guy right here, Joey Merlino. Horrible human being.
Why do you say that?
He robbed, he actually robbed Joe Pungitor's mother's jewelry. Joe Pungitor's mother was sleeping on a couch in her house. In the summertime, doors are open, everybody's in and out. He went in there, seen her sleeping, went upstairs and grabbed all her jewelry and took it. Also, he beats everybody, borrows money, never pays nobody back. When my uncle was in jail, I would collect my uncle's rent from Chucky. It was always short. And it wasn't Chucky taking it. I know he was taking it, a few hundred here, a few hundred. Every time I got money, it was a few hundred short. And I don't want to say nothing to Chucky about it, but that's Joey Merlino. Low life.
You ever had a run-in with him? You ever had any experiences with him?
No, he was like younger when I was around. I used to call him Jose.
So, Phil Leonetti, obviously he did the book with Scott Bernstein, Mafia Prince. And, what you see here is, Phil Leonetti, there's no love lost between Phil Leonetti and Joey Merlino. Phil Leonetti was a nephew of Nicky Scarfo, and he was also towards the end of Nicky Scarfo's reign, he was the underboss. And so, they ended up having a falling out. But, I want to also play what Joey Merlino had to say about all this.
7 years is concurrent. I don't know what concurrent means.
What's
concurrent? I want the ninth grade. I don't know what's concurrent mean.
Yeah, I
He
saw
said they
that.
ran them all together. So I got 7 years.
7 years for breaking up that, and he wrote about it in his book.
Yeah,
but he forgot that part out.
He left that chapter out. They all got the same story.
Yeah.
Philip was never in jail. He got lucky. He always got on bail. He beat every case. So he was Crazy Phil. He loved that name.
Yeah.
His mother loved it. Every day they used to write about him. He was like, they wrote about him every day. Crazy Phil Leonetti. He loved it. So he gets locked up, beats the case. He beat every case. If he would have beat the last case, he'd still be here. He'd still be Crazy Phil.
Mm-hmm.
But, then he went to jail, and they babysat him. There was 20. They were all co-defendants. My father was co-defendants. They were with him in Holmesburg.
Okay.
He got beat up in Holmesburg. He didn't put that in the book. And a couple of guys smashed the guy. There was a fight. As soon as he was by himself and lost the case, then he found God and the government. Now he's not Crazy Phil no more. He's Scared Phil.
Wow. Okay.
He got 40 years, and if he would have won that case, he'd be on the street right now.
Yeah.
Doing the same thing he was doing his whole life.
Yeah.
But I guess when the handcuffs get on him, they find God, and he robbed all his uncle's money and jewelry, and the government let him keep it.
Wow. It seems like the government lets everybody do whatever they want.
They do whatever they want.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like they had.
So the main point on this was that I just wanted to show you where some of the issues are between Phil Leonetti and Joey Merlino. Phil Leonetti was a confidential informant. He ends up testifying against Joey Merlino. We hear the issues between the two of them. So I expect it will continue to have Joey Merlino go after the informants. Like I said, we have the rat of the month. I think that'll continue. Recently we also had the situation with his cheesesteak restaurant, that he's trying to set up. And so there's been 2 suspicious fires. I mean, I don't know where things are at with that investigation. I know that, there's people that say that New York's upset with him, but, I don't think this is something from New York. But, at the same time, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. So, just answer me in the comments. I'm just curious, where do you think Joey Merlino will be in a year? Do you think he'll still be on YouTube and Patreon? Now we're going to move on to Jee Burell. I did a show about a week and a half ago when Jee Burell got arrested. So he had an incident in June at a restaurant where he ended up getting charged with assault and also criminal mischief. And so he was arrested and given a summons back in June, and he was supposed to show up in court, and he didn't show up. And so a warrant was issued for his arrest for the failure to appear. And so as I've been looking at this case, it just seems a little bit unusual to me. I mean, as I've looked through the case, I just have to think that Gene is still working with the feds. That's really what I think whenever I look at what's going on. And I've got people on the street that I've talked to that say the same thing. They said that no way Gene is not still working with the feds. And so for me, where I see things that are a little bit unusual is he gets arrested, he gets the summons to go to court. There's not any sort of bond that's required on that. And then he gets arrested on the failure to appear. And then he's released within a few hours, and he's released on his own recognizance. And it's just odd to me, a couple of things. One, no bond was required. Even though he didn't show up to court, no bond was required. And the thing is that what the judge and the courts want is to make sure that a defendant does show up for court. And the way they do that is to, require a bond. In the case with Jee Burell, they didn't do it. What's also interesting is he was arrested on a weekend. He was arrested on a Saturday evening, and he was released within 6 hours. And the way that a person is released, or a person that gets bond, is a magistrate has to make that decision. And so a magistrate on the weekends, yeah, you might have a magistrate, but typically you don't see magistrates in the middle of the night. So it's just unusual to me on a weekend that he's able to get out within 6 hours, and then he's not required to post a bond. Yeah, I just don't understand that. And then now I hear that this week he's currently in Los Angeles, and so he's being allowed to travel, outside the state. And like I said, I know that the charges against him are pretty minor misdemeanors. But at the same time, normally, there's a little bit more control. There's a little bit more restrictions on someone that's in the shoes that Jee Burell is. So we'll see what happens to Jee. But, I would not be surprised that we find out one day that Jee Burell is still working with the feds. And the next story is about Louis Kasman. I know that Jeff Nadeau of the Sit Down did the interview with him this past week. And also, I know that Jeff's spoken with him and had an interview at least, I think, a couple of times before that. And so I just want to explain, why there's this beef between the Gotti family and Louis Kasman. And I think it goes a lot deeper than just that Louis Kasman was an informant and testified against John Gotti Jr. It goes a lot deeper than that. We know that Louis Kasman would actually visit John Gotti himself in prison. John Gotti ended up, he was in Marion, and then later was in Springfield, Missouri, when he was fighting cancer. And so Louis Kasman would visit him, and John Gotti, according to Louis, considered him like an adopted son. One of the things that upset the family, the Gotti family, is that Louis Kasman had spoken to John Gotti about, how he wanted his funeral and where he wanted to be buried. And so he wanted to be buried next to his son, Frankie. When they had the wake for John Gotti he died in June of 2002. Peter Gotti, not John Gotti's brother, but John Gotti's son, Peter, was supposed to give a memorial for John Gotti, and it ended up being Louis Kasman that gave the memorial. So basically, he read what Peter Gotti had written down, and then also Angel Gotti and Victoria had also put together statements that they wanted read, and Louis Kasman ended up doing that for the family. And so this was something that upset, I know from reading the book Shadows of My Father, that John Gotti Jr. was very upset with the way that the memorial service went, especially with Louis Kasman. And we know that Louis Kasman had been a confidential informant since 1996. John Gotti died in 2002. And so for 6 years, when Louis Kasman was visiting John Gotti, he was wearing a wire. He was recording, the conversations. Also, Louis Kasman was a paid informant. He was getting something like $15,000 a month for at least a 2 or 3 year period. And then, those payments ended sometime in the mid 2000s because the federal government accused Louis Kasman of stealing. I know that Louis had went through a bad divorce. There was also allegations that Louis had taken his daughter's college fund. I think there was like $250,000 in the college fund, and he never paid it back. And so that really didn't sit well, with his ex-wife and the family. And back to when Louis was wearing a wire, according to John Gotti Jr., what that did was that caused John Gotti to spend most of his time in solitary confinement, and he blames Lewis on that. One of the worst incidents that occurred was with John Gotti's wife. And so John Gotti's wife had had a stroke and she had to go through surgery. And Lewis Kasman went to visit her in the hospital a couple of days later, and he happened to be wearing a wire, and he was recording the conversation that he had with John Gotti's wife, widow at the time. It just didn't sit well how low that Lewis Kasman would stoop to get information for the feds. And so that was a lot of the reason that the family had problems with Lewis Kasman. All right, so the next part, we had a photo of Quiet Dom Cerillo that put up on the community page, and then there were several people that spoke about how Quiet Dom had his kid Nicholas killed. Because of that interest, I went ahead and did a short on Nicholas Cerillo. Nicholas Cerillo, the son of Quiet Dom Cerillo, was born in 1960 in the Bronx. Nicholas grew up spoiled but in a good home, and he gets in trouble for dope by the time he's 18. Even in his 30s, he's living at home with Quiet Dom as an addict, and he's always a problem for his father. Quiet Dom has a heart attack in 1998 due in part to stress from dealing with Nicholas, and the father and son are now estranged. Nicholas is no longer protected on the street. Nicholas tries to hustle any way he can to make money and is struggling with dope. In late April 2004, Cerillo tries to get $1,700 from Bonanno Capo, Dominic Shikali, for renovations done by a friend, and in the process gets respectful to Dominic, and an altercation happens. Later, a meeting between the Genovese and Bonannos take place and everything's squashed. However, it's said that Quiet Dom was upset with his son over the altercation. In May 2004, Nicholas was on his way to Home Depot in the country club section of the Bronx when he was never heard from again, presumed to be whacked by the Genovese. Okay, so I wanted to show you that video, and also wanted to talk to you a little bit about what Dominic Shikali said to me. So what happened with Nicholas, as I mentioned in the short, he was Quiet Dom's son. He was born in 1960. He grew up. He was never really part of that life. He is like a lot of these guys. He was the son of an infamous mobster. And, he struggled. He struggled with addiction issues most of his life. He was just becoming too much for his father. In 1998, Quiet Dom had a heart attack, and that was in part due to the issues that he was having with his son, Nicholas. And by this time, Nicholas is 38 years old, still living at home. He tells him that he has to leave. And so no more is Nicholas under the protection of his father. So Nicholas goes out on the street, he's hustling and all that. And so what ended up happening was that Dominic Shikali had a real estate company. He renovated some of the properties, and so one of the friends of Nicholas actually did work for Dominic Shikali. Dominic at the time was a captain in the Bonanno family. Most of the payment had been made to the friend, and what was left was $1,700, and that would be paid upon there were like 2 or 3 issues that need to be resolved. I think there was something with the toilet, something with a couple of different items. And so he was going to get the remaining $1,700. I think Dominic Shikali had paid, I don't know, something like $30,000, $35,000. And, there was just this amount that was left. And so for whatever reason, Nicholas got involved in the situation and wanted to get the $1,700 from Dominic Shikali. So he goes to his office, they meet, and I don't believe that Dominic Shikali knew who Nicholas was at the time. And so they do a walk and talk, and unfortunately, Nicholas starts pressing Dominic Shikali for the $1,700. And, they get into an altercation, and then Nicholas runs to his car, and then they start yelling that they had a gun or something. And so Dominic Shikali runs over there, and, basically there's the altercation continues. And there was no gun, but, Dominic didn't know that. This caused a sit down between the Genovese family and the Bonanno family. And, the main issue was not so much that they were upset with Dominic Shikali because Dominic didn't do anything wrong. They were upset with what Nicholas did. So there was a meeting, and as far as Dominic Shikali and Vinny Bassiano, it was squashed. There were no problem. And then it was 2 weeks later when Nicholas disappears. And so from what we know, Quiet Dom did order the hit on his son. And so while I was talking to Dominic Shikali today, what was interesting is that he actually is going to do something in the near future where he's going to reveal for the first time who the 3 gunmen are. He's going to go into a lot of details about what happened to Nicholas that has never been disclosed before. I don't even have that information, so I'll be having to wait like the rest of us to see what happens. But I think that a lot of people will be interested when Dominic Shikali gives the full story on what happened to Nicholas Cerillo, which is Quiet Dom's son. Yeah, so that was all that I wanted to cover today. We do have some upcoming interviews I'm excited about. I'll be providing more information on those as they come up. So expect to see some interviews starting in the next week or so. Again, thank you for getting us over 30,000 subscribers. Thank you for all the support and the comments, with regarding both the videos and the shorts. And it really means a lot to me. So again, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to the show if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. Take care, stay safe, and God bless you always.